From the Daily Caller. Former Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu pleads with U.S. and world powers not to pursue dangerous and absurd Iran nuclear agreement. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 verse 3. For when they shall say, peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. Jeremiah chapter 49 verse 20. Therefore hear the counsel of the Lord Yahweh that he had taken against Edom and his purposes, that he had purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitations desolate with them. Jeremiah chapter 50 verse 45. Therefore hear ye the counsel of the Lord Yahweh, that he had taken against Babylon and his purposes, that he had purposed against the land of the Chaldeans. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them. At the noise of the taking of Babylon, the earth is moved, and the cry is heard among the nations. Shalom. All praises, blessings, glories, and honors be unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahushai Bahashem, Racha Kodash. Double honors to my apostles and bishop elders of Great Millstone who have taught me this truth, as well as men of like mind. Shalom wa chasad, which means peace and mercy to the elect of the nation of Israel, whom you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians, and Israelite foreigners of the seed line of our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whom is scattered here in America, which is Babylon the Great, and abroad. To you I say Shalom in Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai Ratazah. This lesson is edifying. Again, the title of this article from the Daily Caller reads, Former Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu pleads with U.S. and world powers not to pursue dangerous and absurd Iran nuclear agreement. And we knew from the jump that this so-called Iranian nuclear agreement between the U.S. and Iran would come to naught, because all roads are leading to biblical prophecy concerning the third world's woe. But before that happens, the mark of the beast, which is the RFID microchip, must and will be mandated. For this is a major part of biblical prophecy. Former Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu pleaded with U.S. and world powers not to pursue a dangerous and absurd Iran nuclear agreement that he claims will enable Iran to become a trust-hold nuclear state.
The desperate rush to sign this flawed nuclear agreement with Iran is not only absurd, it's downright dangerous. Yesterday, Iran fired missiles in the vicinity of the American consulate in Iraq. And the U.S. continues to charge ahead, along with the other powers, to sign a nuclear agreement that will give the Ayatollahs a nuclear arsenal. It would also relieve sanctions and give them hundreds of billions of dollars in order to continue the terror that they waged yesterday and wage every day throughout the Middle East and the world. This agreement is even worse than its predecessor, because in 3 years' time, under this agreement, Iran will be a threshold nuclear state. It will have enough enriched uranium to create dozens and dozens of nuclear bombs, and it will have the ICBMs to deliver them to any place in the United States. That is unbelievable. It's not merely unacceptable. It endangers not only my country, Israel, but your country, the United States, and the entire world. We should not let an aggressive, rogue, terrorist regime like Iran have nuclear weapons. Have we learned nothing?
And what will they do in retaliation to this? They will take it upon themselves to attack Iran, thus drawing out America to become a guard unto themselves. And then when that happens, when Iran retaliates, Russia will then become a guard unto Iran, according to the book of Ezekiel, the 38th chapter. And that will spark the Third World War. By the way, 1144, 144. Netanyahu, Israel's longest-serving prime minister, whose tenure ended last year, claims the new deal being negotiated with Iran would relieve sanctions and give them Iran hundreds of billions of dollars in order to continue the terror that they waged yesterday and wage every day throughout the Middle East and the world. This agreement is even worse than its predecessor, Netanyahu said, referring to the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, negotiated by the Obama administration and repealed by President Trump in 2018. The deal being negotiated will enable Iran to have enough enriched uranium to create dozens and dozens of nuclear bombs, and it will have the ICBMs to deliver them to any place in the United States. This will be Israel's justification in attacking Iran, or one of its justifications amongst many others. This is unbelievable. It's not merely unacceptable. It endangers not only my country, Israel, but your country, the United States, and the entire world. We should not let an aggressive, rogue terrorist regime like Iran have nuclear weapons, said the visible irritated Netanyahu. Recently, the Iran nuclear negotiations have stalled because Russia is reportedly trying to use the talks as leverage to undermine the sanctions much of the world has imposed on it because of its aggression in Ukraine, according to the Wall Street Journal. The US and major world powers are reportedly prepared to offer Iran massive sanctions relief that critics argue would be a capitulation, according to former State Department staff Gabriel Noranha. New. The United States is preparing to lift sanctions on several of the Iranian regime's most notorious human rights abusers implicated in the torture and execution of political dissidents, the murder of protesters, and the persecution of Iran's you-know-what community. Details in. The United States is preparing to lift sanctions on several of the Iranian regime's most notorious human rights abuses. And by the way, the U.S. doesn't need Iran's oil. America is one of the largest producers of oil. Okay, so don't let them fool you. But they got to keep playing this psyop to push their agenda, to further their endeavors. The United States is prepared to lift sanctions on several of Iran's regime's most notorious human rights abuses implicated in the torture and execution of political dissidents, the murder of protesters, and the persecution of Iran's alphabet community, according to Noranha. This concludes the article. The theme of this article is that these Amalekites, which are Edomites, are getting ready to draw out America into the Middle East to become a guard unto themselves. Themselves meaning unto Israel. Because as it is written here in Jeremiah 49, verse 20, therefore hear the counsel of the Lord Yahweh that he had taken against Edom and his purposes. And who is Edom today? The so-called Caucasian race, beginning with their hegemony. That he had purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. And who is the least of the flock? The state of Israel. Who inhabits the state of Israel? The Amalekites, who are Edomites. And they are going to draw out America, Babylon the Great, into the Middle East, into the Arabian Peninsula, to become a guard unto them. Because they will attack Iran, thus kickstarting the Third World War, which cometh quickly. And then once that happens, Iran retaliates, Russia is going to become a guard unto Iran according to biblical prophecy in the book of Ezekiel, the 38th chapter. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitations desolate with them. And the habitations of the Edomites will be made desolate. Thus saith Yahweh Bashem Yahushua according to biblical prophecy. In Revelation, the 18th chapter, Isaiah, the 13th chapter, and numerous other scriptures. Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 45. Therefore hear ye the counsel of the Lord Yahweh that he had taken against Edom. And notice in Jeremiah the 49th chapter, it mentions Edom. But here in Jeremiah 50, it mentions Babylon. This tells us that Babylon and Edom are synonymous. Babylon in the Hebrew is Babal, which means confusion. For America is a bitter land of confusion. America habituates the ancient manners and customs of all the previous kingdoms of antiquity. Antiquity means old. That's why it's called Babylon. And its purpose is that he had purpose against the land of the Chaldeans. The land of the Chaldeans is here in America, Babylon the Great. The ancient Chaldeans were warlocks. And America practices nothing but witchcraft and necromancer and all kind of different forms of witchcrafts. But that's going to all come to naught. Isaiah 47 chapter tells us that. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them. So, the fire gonna come down and burn up all of them. Wherever Edomite is, judgment from the Almighty Yahweh Bashem Yahushai is gonna come down upon them. So with that, I pray this lesson was edifying. It is edifying to the elect. Just wanted to keep it real brief and to the point. All right. So with that, I say shalom to the elect.